here today. Both me and my colleague Bhavya are going to talk a little bit more about specific learning disabilities in higher education vertical. So that's the focus of our presentation today. And just beginning with the presentation. So this is a picture where we would want anybody of you from the audience to volunteer and let us know that if you can see and tell somebody over here who might have a specific learning disability. Any one of you can just like volunteer, unmute yourself and tell me anything. You can choose any number of it that you perceive to be a person with disability.
One participant, one.
Thank you so much, sir. I have people saying 4, 5, and then 2 in the chat box. So this just says a lot about how it is very difficult to look at a person and then tell them that if they are suffering or have SLD or not. As we say that this is one of the invisible disability which is very difficult to just perceive by looking at a person, which makes it even more difficult to be screened and diagnosed. And therefore, it calls for us to talk, understand a lot about it. We never know that maybe one of us has it and we have not been able to, help understand or surface that for ourselves. I have known people who have understood that they might have had an SLD when they were probably towards their graduation or much later in life, which brings this need of us to understand that what do we exactly mean by SLDs, and the reason that we need to talk a bit about this in our day-to-day life. So, understanding neurodiversity, we are focusing on SLD, specific learning disabilities over here, which includes dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and dyspraxia. And we have also tried to put attention on autism and ADHD, which is our attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So there's a quick data that we can see over here, which says that at least 1 in 5 people are thought to be affected by dyslexia, which means that 5% of the audience right now who are a part of this webinar might be having dyslexia, and only 1 out of that 20 people of the 5% that we are catering to over here is mostly diagnosed. So this is as common in us, and it is as seldom that we are diagnosed or screened with it. So when I talk about SLDs, what exactly do we mean about it over here? We just refer to how people's brain function and process and learn information in different ways, and it has it does not coincide in any manner with your IQ. So an individual with a certain SLD has an average or an above average IQ mostly. It's a lifelong condition that runs in the family, so we may say that they're genetic. And then access to accommodation and assistive technologies in today's time have really helped these individuals excel through their lifetimes. We more than often, as we saw in the last slide, these are invisible disabilities and they can be diagnosed through psychometric testing. So they're not perceived very easily. And are the key challenges because more than often people are not screened. And if they are, there's always this lack of assistance that we know that exists and that can be provided. Therefore, we all are here today to talk about this. How do specific learning disabilities manifest? So this is a screen, and when I say dyslexia, we are focusing at uh, a disability which makes it comparatively difficult for people to read and write mostly, and it accounts for at least 80% of the SLD. So this is a screen over here. Again, I would volunteer somebody to just maybe try and read something over here. Just like maybe just like give the first line a shot. Anybody can volunteer.
It's difficult, ma'am, to read.
Exactly. So this screen is a perceivable idea of how dyslexia might look like for somebody who's trying to read. So there's constant movement of letters. You know, the letters are the similar letters are very difficult to be perceived in terms of D, B, and there's so much of movement that it becomes very difficult for a person to read it. And that is what we are trying to implicate, that this could be a perceivable picture of how a text could look to somebody with dyslexia. Then we are moving at dyscalculia. This is again present in 5% of the population, which is a huge number. And what we're trying to say that people with dyscalculia often face a lot of challenges with math. It will be basic calculation, understanding basic measurements, which makes it very difficult for them to operate when it comes to math. Then we're talking about dysgraphia. This is diagnosed in the childhood and often affects person's handwriting abilities and fine motor skills. So it might be very difficult and challenging for a person to be able to actually convert their knowledge and write it on paper. Again, this does not reflect on their understanding of or knowledge of a certain subject. Then here's a video. We would just dive into this video. I would just request my colleague, she started to shut down.
I was a cheater in class, and I'll tell you why. Because in math class, for example, the teacher would put up the sum on the table, and I would work it out in my head and have the answer ready with me. And when she would ask me, or he would ask me to show the working, I wouldn't have it, right? So they always assumed I copied it from my peer sitting next to me, and then the peer said, "No, I got the wrong answer." So this guy's figured it out in some way or form. So you went through that a few times because our brains just think differently, and we tend to understand what is being said before the other person is finished saying what they're saying. And that becomes very unnerving. I didn't know my ABCDs till the fifth grade, to be very honest. The only reason I could write my name was because there was another Kunal in my class. He wrote it, I memorized it, and I simply copied it. It was as simple as that. In the younger classes, I would sit at the back. So by the time the class finished reading the chapter twice, I had memorized it. So I would just pick up on where the person dropped off and recite from my memory. My sister started a computer class in the 8th grade, and I was in the 5th, and I got intrigued by the fact that she was typing something on this electronic device, and it was doing something magical on the screen, and I picked up on that, and I started sort of spending my breaks in the computer lab, bugging the teachers and the assistants to teach me what they were doing. By the time I hit my 7th grade, I was actually doing 10th grade level programming and college school projects, and that's what became my go-to thing as an out for my lack of success in academia. And the school encouraged it. My friends encouraged it. And that's when, I decided right on my 8th grade to get a full-time job.
So here was a small here was a small talk shared by somebody who themselves is dyslexic, which is Mr. Kunal, and today he is the founder and MD of Airway. And what we hear from his life experience till now is that if you are supported in a certain manner, and if your issues are identified, if your disabilities are identified, and we can give you a direction where you excel, people end up doing wonders. And if not, it can always go downhill. So our focus is always to understand and support this. Again, we have a text written on the screen that I hope is visible to everybody. And this is something which, if I ask anybody of you to volunteer and read, it's going to hardly make any sense. But if it's reshuffled to what is written, it becomes very easy to read. So again, somebody who is trying to communicate what is currently written on the screen might actually be delivered in such a manner. So again, while the person would have an understanding where he would have the knowledge about what they're trying to talk, it becomes very difficult for them to write it down on paper the way they understand it in their brain. Now we're going to do this another quick exercise where I would volunteer somebody to read the color and not the word that is visible on the screen. Would request anybody to just volunteer and do that.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. What exactly you want me to say
Read
about
the
it?
color and not the word that you can see on the screen.
पर्पल अच्छा पर्पल नहीं बोलना है, ग्रीन बोलना है. ग्रीन, येलो, ब्लू, ब्लैक, ऑरेंज, रेड, रेड, ऑरेंज, पर्पल.
Yes.
Or
Color.
you wanted the color to be said.
Purple,
Yeah.
gray, and red.
अच्छा, पर्पल, ग्रे, रेड, येलो,
Yes.
येलो, ब्लूइश, ग्रे, ब्लैक, ग्रे, ऑरेंज, रेड, brown, black, yellow, purple.
Thank you so much, Dr. Art. So here again, if you look at it, it was very difficult for us to even understand what is asked of it. And when you look at the word that is written, what is written, so it's very difficult to decipher the color and say it out loud. And
Yeah.
here talking, and we know that we one of us may not have SLD. So again, somebody with SLD asking them to do certain things which is beyond workable for their brains is more than often not fair to them. And again, I would just want to reiterate a lot that your understanding of a subject while you have SLD has got nothing to do with your intellectual quotient. And that is something that is more than often confused. And coming to beyond language processing, SLD impacts our functioning in more than multiple ways. So it goes quite deep down for a person who has SLD and has been trying to, uh, maneuver their way throughout their educational and foundational years. So it could result more than often into poor self-esteem, where their judgments made about their IQ based on how they're reading something, how they're able to write, and this sparks an emotion and frustration within them, which is not something a student in their learning life should face. There is always a gap in their oral and written performance. Again, for your brain to perceive knowledge and to be able to communicate it in written manner becomes very difficult because of poor writing. They have memory challenges and they can very easily forget tasks and deadlines. And especially when they're provided with like multiple instructions all at once. So it's very difficult for them to take that download. Their processing is slow and it takes them more than often much longer to process information by reading or writing. They're sensitive to overstimulation. So if person is anyway, overwhelmed with emotions, it becomes very difficult for them to concentrate due to like, maybe a lot of movement, sound, and light around. And this eventually gets and trickles down to difficulties in planning. People who have dyslexia often struggle with time management, which in totality impacts their ability to actually be able to deliver tasks at the given deadline. So these disabilities, our specific learning disabilities, actually go beyond our understanding and our capabilities of reading. We more than often see that people with dyslexia are very resilient, and with the right kind of support, they find a way to cope and succeed, which is actually applicable to any sort of disability that exists. And here there is this another video where we try and understand that how given the right support helps a child with dyslexia to perform better.
Rohit was one of our early entrants into higher education. He has significant difficulties with reading and writing. The admissions committee at the college was worried whether he would be able to manage the multiple flight of stairs to his classroom. But in reality, he actually found it difficult to navigate new schedules, new systems, keeping up with his lectures, getting to his classroom on time, finding his classroom, making new friends. The list was endless. The first day he went to college, he went to the library to get his library cards, and he was pulled up for his illegible handwriting with the comment, "This is what happens when we have to fulfill quotas in admission." Not surprisingly, Rohit struggled through the first term. He was quite miserable. He spent as little time as possible at college, and it was only regular, intensive counseling that kept him on track. His exams came along, the first term exams, and he had discovered that he'd been given extra time to finish his papers, but the seat in the hall had to be vacated because the next exam was scheduled immediately after. And he was describing this to his counselor. He says, I felt like a worm. Everybody was standing in the corridor and discussing what to do with me. The principal came along and asked what was going on. And he took a different view. He pulled up the staff for not having made adequate arrangements. And he took Rohit with him. I'm going to describe this in his own words, which he told us about later. He said, "Ma'am, he took me to his own office. He sat me down at his desk. He made space there for me. And he told me to finish my paper, take as long as I wanted. And he said, I'm sitting outside making phone calls. Don't worry, nobody's going to disturb you here." What a validation. This validation really changed his life at college. Suddenly, he was able to advocate for himself. He dived into campus activities, took part, joined some clubs. Ironically, in his last year at college, he took over a student newsletter as editor, and he made so many changes and made it so innovative that it won several awards.
So again, it's a very interesting contrast that we see here between
Your voice is breaking.
what impact can your surroundings and your facilitators can have on you. We are talking about a child who was not understood by a facilitator in his library and much later validated by one of his principals and the kind of positive impact it had on him. And therefore, when we say that with the right kind of support, people with dyslexia, people with SLDs can not only cope but also excel beyond measures has been replicated more than often in our environment. Dyslexia powers our life. This is a very beautiful slide that talks about how there have been people, there have been innovators, there have been people who have been inventors who have had dyslexia. Talking about Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Henry Ford, Wright brothers, Steve Jobs, and Bill Hewitt. And in this one slide, we can just see things around us currently, all of us, wherever we are. And we'll be able able to focus at least one object around us that has been invented by a person with dyslexia. And that gets us to this very interesting data that 40% of self-made millionaires right now are dyslexic. And on the screen, we have a few of the logos of people who are millionaires and have been are dyslexic. We talk about IKEA, we talk about Tesla, Ford Motors, Walt Disney, Charles Schwab, Tommy Hilfiger, IBM, CNN. Now these are the brands that are very common to our eyes, but we before this might have not known that these are millionaires who are dyslexic, and you know how things that have been made, invented, marketed by them coincide with like objects we use in our day-to-day lives. How does a mind that cannot process language manage to make such an impact? Now, this is a very interesting question. We're talking about somebody who's not able to process language in text or speech form. Then, how are they sort of able to create this kind of impact that we see around us? And here is something, a quote by Richard Branson, who's the founder of Virgin Group. And he says that I simply wouldn't be where I am today if I wasn't dyslexic. In the real world, dyslexia can be a huge advantage. Many people with dyslexia have great imagination, creativity, and problem solving. And I think that is our answer to the question that how somebody who's not able to comprehend language in a written form or they can convert it into writing, how are they able to innovate? How are they able to create such day-to-day life solutions? And the answer is the creativity, which gets us to this point which we call the dyslexic. What is dyslexic edge? Global studies around have shown that the percentage of students with dyslexia in fields such as engineering, arts, and entrepreneurship are over twice the percentage of individuals with dyslexia in general population. So, if we look at the ratio, people who have dyslexia are currently in fields where they're creating, where they're innovating constantly. And why does that happen? Because everybody with dyslexia more than often has this edge where they visualize things better than their peers. They're constantly innovating. Their communication skills are at par with people who really excel in terms of making conversations, understanding the person. That these things skills, their ability to connect is again great, and they're always able to see the larger pictures, which makes them real good problem solvers because they can see the large picture, they can identify the problem, and they can work towards creating innovative solutions. And that is what we call the dyslexic edge, which has helped people around us with dyslexia create these and invented these products that we've been using more than often without realizing how they've been created or they've been created with people with SLD. Now, talking about the global scenario, a lot of top universities are attracting SLD students because of the dyslexic uh, edge that they provide. It's the most common disease that is there in MIT, and therefore it is extended to be known as the MIT disease. We have the Yale University, Brown, Stanford, IIMB. Then we have Ashoka University, and these people willingly attracting these students because they know the edge with which they come to the institute. What is India doing to tap into this critical resource pool of dyslexic speakers? Uh, it gives me immense pleasure to understand that how we've been growing, talking, and accommodating and working towards inclusion of people with SLDs. Talking about Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016. Here, it has been formally recognized as a disability for the first time in 2016, and this mandates 5% reservation for PWDs in government and government-aided institutions. So here we are looking at that there's a heterogeneous group of conditions wherein there's a deficit of processing language, speaking it or writing it that may manifest itself as a difficulty to comprehend, read, write, spell, or to do calculation. And this includes conditions as perceptual disabilities, again, something that can only be perceived and is not visible to our naked eyes, like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, and development aphasia. So now these are the things that have been formally recognized, which makes it even more easy for us to work towards their inclusion. And the new education policy over here, it is in complete consonance with the provision of RPWD Act 2016. It goes ahead to mandate that children with disability, including those with learning disability, will be enabled to fully participate in regular schooling process from the foundation stage to higher education, ensuring equitable access to quality education. So this is something when we are talking about how when we're trying to make quality education equitable, we're talking from the foundational stages to the higher education, and we're trying to make everything available in a very inclusive manner, not only to children with disability, but we have also recognized learning disability. Universities and colleges will thus be required to set up high quality support centers to support SADG students to transition to higher education. And this is a massive leap that we are making as a country towards inclusion. Talking further, what does NEP 2020 manifest in terms of steps to be taken by the government? We are looking at embarking suitable funds. We are trying to set up very clear targets for higher gross enrollment for SEDGs. We are trying to provide, the idea is that the government is taking steps to provide more financial assistance and scholarship in both public and private HUIs. So when we talk about creating a supportive environment, we need funds. We need us to be able to sustain themselves, and being able to provide the financial assistance and scholarship is the best way to go about it. The other very important factor that we are looking over here is that we conduct outreach programs on higher education opportunities and scholarships. While we know that there has been a lot of programs that have been created, we are working towards, like, creating constant opportunities. There's a crave need for us to do outreach programs where students who need it know that such things exist, and only then can the targets that we're looking at be met. And last but not the least, develop and support technology tools for better participation learning outcomes. Any technological assistive tool is the go-to way of being able to support and help our students excel with their learning outcomes. So these are the few things, the steps that have been taken by the government. And then we talk about steps to be taken by all national higher education institutes. They're focusing on more financial assistance and scholarship, again, sensitizing and reaching out to students who need scholarships that are available.
പിന്നെ നിങ്ങളെല്ലാരും ഒന്ന് ഉറപ്പുവരുത്തിക്കൊള്ളട്ടെ നമ്മളെല്ലാ മെസ്സേജ്
Can we just have the audience on mute, please? Question that if everybody can put themselves on mute. Thank you. Then the focus is on making admission processes and curriculum inclusive. So while we're talking a lot about what is being provided for, what exists in terms of higher education institute, we are sort of focusing on admission processes. While there's a lot that is available within our institute, within our curriculum, it is very important to make sure the admission processes are inclusive to have children and students with SLD on board. Ensure all buildings and facilities are disabled friendly. We need to make sure that uh, the structure that we are providing is inclusive for our students. We develop bridge courses, provide counseling and support. Again, it's very important for us that we sort of help them not just physically, financially, but there has to be a lot of counseling that is required in terms of support for such students. As at the beginning, we how SLDs can manifest beyond just being not able to read or write in a certain. Then we ensure that the entire campus is sensitized, and we are just not talking about the students, but also the faculty and the counselors for them to understand, for them to be able to know what is it like, what might a student be struggling with, and last but not the least, develop institutional development plans for action on again increasing the SED's participation. Then we're talking about directions of our regulators. Quickly talking about UGC guidelines. Right now, it asks
DDFS ഒന്നും കറണ്ട് ഇല്ല പിന്നെ എന്ത് DDFS അത് നല്ല ഒപ്പിട്ടേക്കണം.
again talking about UGC guidelines. UGC guideline asks to list the need for an assisted transition from school to college and graduation and post graduation. So this is something that we need to focus on and are asked to focus on. That transition can be a difficult process. Any child with SLD, everybody, all of us need a good transition. So we should also focus on children with SLD in terms of school to college or college to further for graduation or post graduation. Then we need to recognize the needs basis the SLD and create the support accordingly. Provide assistance with oral and written material. Then look at the pedagogical advancement. This is again something in terms of multi-sensory learning, and there's a lot of assistive tech-based learning that is provided right now that can actually work wonders in terms of learning outcomes. And then curriculum accommodation with subjects, assignment, choices, exams, and evaluation. So this as a whole might be something that really helps and assists students with disability. Coming to AICTE guidelines, AICTE's Professor P.P. Chakrabarty Committee on Inclusion of Students with SLD in Higher Education recommendation is accepted and is in the process of being implemented, and it very like it talks in details about what do we mean by SLD and what is the kind of support that we're looking at, and this is something which comes from curriculum point of view, admission point of view, sensitization point of view, outreach point of view. So it's something very detailed and in process of being implemented. There are circulars that mandate exam support and accommodation such as scribe and compensatory time. So while we are saying that for SLD, you do not need to make any change in the rigor of the curriculum or the course being provided. All we are asking for is given with extra support in terms of accommodation, scribe or time, your student can still be able to cope up with the rigor and might perform wonders. Then there are guidelines and directives for inclusion during online and distance learning factors. So whatever material, pedagogy, assessment is provided, again has to be inclusive from that point of view. And currently, the NIRF ranking also allocates 20 points to outreach and inclusivity, which is again a great step for making sure that it is being abided and followed by most of our HEIs right now. Then we start talking about struggle of transitioning to higher education institute from a student's point of view. So on campus life, sometimes it can be very overwhelming for a student to just go ahead and disclose their disability and then go ahead and self-advocate it because they more than often fear being bullied, rejected, judged in terms of their IQ or being isolated. And the second part of it is that it sometimes it becomes very difficult for them to manage daily activities independently and they need support. And you know how it is like it's a new environment, you've just transitioned. It's more than often very difficult for the students to reach out for it directly. So anything like a support staff, a counseling unit makes it very easy for your child to be able to go and ask for the needed support. Then their academic life, coping in the classroom is a difficult task because most of our teaching methodologies are based on reading, writing, note taking, which can be overwhelming because they might not be able to keep up with the pace of the class. Then again, as we spoke later, academic tasks like planning, doing your submissions timely, and finishing your exams within the given time period of 2 hours, 3 hours is more than a hassle. And therefore, they need a lot of balance in terms of going ahead about their academic life and also the day to day pressure it creates. Emotional well being is again something that has to be focused on given how the campus and the academic life can be. Our students can very easily be manifested by something like depression. They can have a risk of low self esteem, and as we see, it's overwhelming. In college life is overwhelming. So, anybody who's struggling with a disability, it's even more overwhelming, and there's a crave need to be able to cope up with this high level of anxiety and risk of overstimulation. So this is something that the more we understand, the better we can support the students. Then again, we have a small video of Miss Kate, who's the president and founder of Maharashtra Dyslexia Association, which we saw. And in that video, we clearly saw that how like the right validation can help our students do wonders in college. Coming to what can we learn from our global leaders. So, focusing on the global examples right now, we will talk about MIT as we spoke earlier. Dyslexia is called the MIT disease. That's the kind of ratio it has. And right now, MIT has a disability and access service office, which works toward inclusivity of students, faculty, and visitors with disabilities on their premises. It ensures equal access for students with disability while upholding the integrity of MIT's program and services. So again, while they're trying to create that equal access for students with disability, we try and we advocate on upholding the rigor of the courses and the services provided. Look at MIT, they're in counseling support. They are also focusing on academic support where their alternative exams, they extend the time, the readers, the scribes, they have distraction reduced setting for a student to perform better so that they're not overstimulated by their environment. Material in alternative form is provided in terms of electronic textbooks, audio material, enlarged course materials, and the instructional aids and services provide note takers. And this is like a fabulous academic support that is being provided by them. In terms of assistive technology, uh, we have consultation on assistive technology options. So it's by an individual's issue that they are being consulted in terms of what assistive tool and technology works the best. And they are also making sure that this assistant converts the MIT academic courses to materials that are more accessible. And when we talk about research, there's a lot of research that they're looking into. They have the McGovern Institute of Brain Research. They're looking into brain imaging, cognitive neuroscience, computational neuroscience, genome engineering, neurotech technology right now. And this is focusing on creating a lot of interventions in terms of dyslexia and the role it sort of plays in terms of the socioeconomic factors. Then coming to Yale University, they have the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity, YCDC, and they work towards creating accommodation, assistive technology, research, documentation of success stories, which is again, I think, a wonderful way of ensuring people who just entered in terms of the staff, in terms of sensitization, that how a certain kind of support can actually result into a success story. And they work towards advocacy and awareness program. They have a strong research base which has studied interventions in dyslexia, conducted longitudinal studies as well as neurobiological studies to understand better of how these SLDs manifest and how can they work towards better support for inclusion. Then talking about assistive technology, they have consultation on assistive technology options. Now they focus a lot on person to person and disability to disability basis in terms of providing that assistive technology. They have the Shorwood's dyslexia for screening students with dyslexia. It might be very surprising. I have known of people and peers who, when they reach to the university, are often screened that they have dyslexia, and that is when a lot of their struggles become very clear in front of them that why they have those struggles and how can they be sorted out now. And yes, last but not the least, the assistive technology that has been wonderful in such a scenario is speech to text, text to speech note taking. Then there's this very interesting academic support highlight. They make curriculum adjustments and they sort of create these adjustments according to the disability of the student, and they also have the availability of tutors and classroom lecture recording that makes it very easy to somebody who's not able to keep up with the space of what is being imparted learning in your classroom. They can always get back to it in the same manner if the lectures are being recorded. Then this is another video by Dr. Sally from Yale's University, and we'll just dive into this.
So what I would do is I would meet with the admissions committee, and then I would try to meet with each of the people separately, because sometimes people don't like to speak up, they don't want to be embarrassed. And slowly, but surely over time, and you saw the results of our Yale outcome study. And so I just want to mention, as a follow-up, I speak to faculty and I give conferences and explain dyslexia and answer questions. And what's so remarkable is when I'll speak at some faculty conference, you say, oh, well, why am I doing this? And then afterwards, I will get so many phone calls, almost in a whisper. But it sounds like I may have this. How do you recognize it? And also make people understand so they don't misinterpret symptoms and become aware of what the possibilities are.
So again, over here, we see that how the higher education institute globally or in our country are trying to create an environment which adapts to the needs of the student and not vice versa, where we ask a student to, sort of adapt to whatever is being provided. To make sure that we get the best learning outcomes, it's the need of the hour that we adapt as a university, as an educational institution to the needs of the students that we are focusing on with with keeping in mind and understanding the multiple disabilities that exist. Moving to Stanford University, they have an Office of Accessible Education and Schwab's Learning Center, SLC. And this guides undergraduate and grad students to become more efficient learners, nurture the students and staff community, and integrate the goal. They streamline and advocate for accommodation for students with SLD. So, Stanford University conducts research programs such as reading and dyslexia research programs because this is something that is ongoing in terms of so much of technology being available. There's a grave need to understand the needs in terms of the support of students with SLDs and trying and creating more and more solutions, which can only happen when you focus a lot on research. Then, in terms of their academic support, they train the faculty for universal design learning concepts so that they can create so the pedagogical support in the class can be created accordingly. They're modifying the learning environment policies in terms of assignments, attendance to make sure that have a support being provided, and they make the assistive technology again available for students. So we can see through and through these universities that we benchmark in terms of the research, in terms of the support they're providing. We understand that more than often they're working towards providing learning coaches, they're working towards a lot of assistive technology and also making a lot of scope for support in terms of your attendance, in terms of assignment, in terms of examination. Moving to Ashoka University, they have an Office of Learning Support (OLS) that works towards the inclusion of students with SLDs. And over here, they again are working on the three variants that most of the universities are focusing on, which is counseling support. They're focusing on faculty training and coordination, remedial support, and again a case by case accommodation. In terms of academic support, again, in terms of the learning material, the exam, the bridge support, they are offering a lot of accommodation. And the last but not the least, there's consultation on assistive technology options, and they help you decide that which ones works the best to assist the disability that the student has. Then we dive into this session on a small expert from Maria Gracia, a learning support coordinator from King's College.
It is the key, basically. And being able to design a curriculum that is inclusive is that where we all kind of strive. And I guess that at university, it can be quite difficult because it is really engaging a variety of academics, a variety of courses, and they all have different challenges. But for example, starting for exams can be really difficult for neurodiverse students, and the writing and the time pressure and so on. So even a change in the way that assessment is done and providing kind of a different way of assessing, not just one way, but so for example, allowing people to show what they know in different ways. And it could be by writing, it could be by presenting, it could be by debating, it could be, in by portfolio. Of course, it is dependent on the course, but just introducing a different way of assessment.
So as we see over here, in one of our previous conversations, there was a very beautiful example that was quoted was that when we talk about support, right, we more than often, like, if a student is not able to speak properly, then we ask them to go get classes. And that is something that is never looked at as an equivalent to, for example, cheating, right? So why, when we're looking at exams and we're trying to create that sort of support in terms of a scribe, or we are trying to accommodate, in terms of a reader, or we are trying to help them extended timelines. Why is that more than often perceived as, oh, we are sort of giving this support that can be equivalent to a student. So we have to understand that for somebody who cannot see properly, they have some sort of visual deficit, then our students can wear glasses. We'll support them. We'll ask them, get your eyesight checked, wear glasses. So why not we look at our SLDs, which are perceivable disabilities, which are invisible disabilities, in the same manner and with the same sort of passion. So now, understanding what SLDs are and how colleges are working towards it, how the regulatory bodies are sort of coming up with these recommendations that we have to abide by, we will try and condense the key areas of intervention that we can look at from the HEI point of view in terms of admission. Now, admission is where we can help the students penetrate to the environment that we are working towards, the support that we are working towards to be provided by these environments. So, focusing on admissions, admitting students with SLDs in the PWD category, we should focus on accommodation for entrance exams in terms of compensatory time, preferential seating to make sure that our students are not overwhelmed by the environmental factors, and scribes. Then looking at college readiness and counseling available throughout the admission process so that there can be a lot of hand holding in terms of that transition. And admission of people trained for SLD needs. That's again very important for people who are there to provide that support to be able to understand the disability towards which they're providing the support. And last but not the least, the scholarships is something that we're looking at. Then we move to faculty and admin sensitization. So while we're talking a lot about awareness, it's very, very effective to sensitize people at all levels within an institute, from faculty to administration to students. And that sort of is like the foundation for creating an environment that is more supportive of disabilities. Then going ahead, training faculty in UDL strategies for teaching and evaluation. So whatever material content assessments are prepared, they're from a point of view of supporting students with disabilities, they're focusing on inclusion from the very beginning, not just while creating content, imparting and also assessing the learning outcomes of that content if it's focused on the UDL strategies. Then facilitating and and inclusive classroom. So this is something that again we have to work towards. It's not very easy. It has to be repetitive. It has to be consistent for us to reach that point where it becomes easy. The inclusive pedagogy and inclusive classrooms as a concept. From there, we move to the classroom support. So once we have our students within the system, we need to sort of provide them with that day-to-day case-by-case support within a classroom, allowing them to use devices, for example, recorders, laptops, to be able to keep up with the pace of the content that is being delivered. Then flexible and preferential seating, that is something that will help them be more settled, be more focused, and then making material available in accessible format. So we know that whatever material exists is reaching to people with all sort of disabilities, and arranging and allowing note takers. So this is something that all of this is again focusing on keeping up with the rigor and the pace in which the knowledge is being imparted in a classroom. Last but not the least, we are moving to curriculum, and whenever we talk about curriculum, we are focusing on providing the support without having to compromise on the rigor of the curriculum and the course or the content being provided. So, giving the choices for flexible subjects, course choices, then moving ahead, modified assignments that are there as opposed to exams, essay, reports with lenient deadlines. So we are focusing in more than one ways to be able to assess the learning of a student. And then last but not the least, accommodation during exams, which can be compensated time, and we can also provide them with a space that is distraction free, again for the best results. Then in terms of creating centers for SLDs, how can we go about? Starting from coordination, streamlining SLD accommodation across the universities so that there's a specific and a uniform accommodation that is being catered to. Facilitates individualized accommodation. Again, we should focus a lot on case-to-case basis, and that is when we can actually get the 100% from the support that we're trying to provide. Work towards awareness and advocacy throughout the campus, and also focus on the learning diversity and talk and make people around the campus be faculty aware about it. Individual tutoring supplement academic support is something that works very good because it's something that is more customized, much more on the basis of individual needs. Career and placement reported support. So now the career and the placement related support is something which gets our loop to be closed in the most effective manner. Our students after college, after their study life, would either want to transition to higher education or move towards working. So this is again something that is very important for them to understand the career trajectory they can focus on, and also the sort of placement related support that is there for them. Students' life, we need to focus and facilitate our students with SLD to manage and be independent individuals on campus. There needs to be a lot of awareness and inclusion workshops for class societies on campus, providing campus handbooks and resources in various accessible formats helps our students be more independent, sort of cuts down on the pressure, and then access to support in terms of groups, buddy system, and mental health services is again a very wonderful way of accommodating and supporting the needs of the child by like-minded people and also cater to their emotional well-being. Moving to the technological support, there's a lot of assistive technology that is currently existing, providing them the access to it, training them for the same, and again on an case to case basis really helps the students, and not just the students, even the faculty. Workshops with faculty on these technology helps them be more aware to provide the best for the students, and the technological assistance in terms of managing their time or schedule is something that again takes away the pressure and helps as students be more independent individual when it comes to the campus. And last but not the least, research, which is very important. The more we learn, the more we are able to create in terms of support. Advocating for centers of neurodiversity research and including neurodiverse scholars while doing that. Accelerating research and assistive technologies, innovation when it comes to SLD specifically, lobbying with organizations for partnership and funding to get the right kind of research assistance in your campuses is something that we can focus on. And this is the last part where we are focusing that when inclusive classrooms are designed well, intervention for students with SLDs help all students learn better. When we say trying to create an inclusive classroom, we are just not trying to focus on students with SLDs. Anything that works towards inclusivity is going to help all students learn better. And if after this we want to go back and just try the conversation, start that conversation of bringing the change or think where to start from, we can that these are the four things that we can just focus on at a very primary level. Sensitize decision makers, the senior leaderships, faculty, anybody who's creating, talking about the change is the in charge of bringing about that change. We should start from there, where we start talking about inclusion of SLDs in HAI. Then develop a holistic inclusion strategy that addresses the faculty capacity, the curriculum design, and accommodation. So maybe have a very holistic view in terms of developing the framework for your strategy. Third, consciously build a culture of inclusion. So, try to sort of put it in the back of your head while creating a culture, while creating a support system, while creating anything that you're trying to create as a part of any higher education institute. Work towards that consciously. And then encourage admissions, track success stories, make sure that PWD categories are fulfilled. Students who need them are there to have the access. These are the few things that we can just begin with. And lastly, we would want to say that just by trying to do this, we are ensuring that we do not miss out on the genius of the next around us. It could be somebody like Albert Einstein, it would be somebody like an Elon Musk, Steve Jobs around us. Just by giving them that right validation, right push, right support, we might just like make a global and a universal impact. So that's what we have to talk about. And moving on, I'm handing it over to my colleague Bhavya. She's now going to have our panel and discuss in terms of the first-hand experience of how is it to be with a specific learning. Thank you, everyone.
We'll now begin with our panel discussion, and one of our speakers couldn't make it due to a family emergency. But we have V. Sanjay Krishnan. Um, Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the panel, Sanjay.
Honor.
Yeah. So Sanjay started his academics in PSPB up to 8th standard. His parents identified his learning difficulties when he was in 1st standard. He writes slowly and makes spelling mistakes, but he's very good at orals. Seeing his struggles, his parents switched from CBSE to state board in 9th grade. After 10th grade, his school advised him to take commerce, but he was interested in robots and electronics. So his parents took him to the campus of TVS CPAT Polytechnic College and gave him full freedom to select his course. He joined a mechatronics course with a combination of robots and artificial intelligence and successfully completed his first year. So to begin, my first question to you, Sanjay, is that you are pursuing a technical degree, which in itself is really difficult and more so with having a specific learning disability. So how do you navigate every day in your college with having an SLD?
Starting from, I had this problem since first standard. Then in this college, I noticed my weakness and the strength of what I really used to get. But usually, I used to struggle in chemistry, nor in maths. So then, due to faculties helped me throughout the first year, and I had some problems in maths and chemistry. So as they went, they used to tell me different ways to read them. Like I had a problem of reading one line in the first line and reading the other lines in the some other direction. So when they told me how to read and write those things in exams, and I had a problem, which is I used to read one thing and write something else. So while using that, I had a problem that, and then I tried to overcome it. Like say in my CA1, my performance was okay, and throughout my academic times, I used to improvise it like using different methods, like using picture way of learning, or seeing videos, or any other ways which helps me, and I improvised it to do it in second year also. Now I'm doing second year in mechatronics.
That's really interesting to know that faculty support is one of the few ways forward to help and support students with SLDs. What are, building on that, what are some of the strategies and accommodations that have helped you cope so far?
For me, strategies like help me is like not keep on reading it. I used to write a lot since to improve my handwriting as well as to read simultaneously. I used to write a lot. So to memorize all those answers or any other thing, I used to write a lot. In order to improve my handwriting, I also used some techniques called writing a paragraph of a book. So
All right. And what are some of the accommodations that the college has provided you, or that the college could do more in terms of providing certain accommodations?
um, the college has given me uh, spelling waivers, handwriting issues, and also extra time 1 hour for my examination also. So college has supported the level best for me to uh, write my exams at the neatest possible and get good marks. And they helped me a lot of ways. Whatever hindrance I had during the reading time, studying times, all those.
That's really good to know that your college is aligning with a lot of um, the global leaders and what they follow. So my last question to you would be that what are the three things you would advise students and faculty on inclusion of students with specific learning disabilities?
I would tell three things. That is, first thing is this is not a very big issue to just worry about. The second thing is take everything easily. Take all the things which you have like handwriting issue or anything studying issue very easily. Don't take it to your mind and blast yourself in every classes. It is very easy to take it. But the third thing is we have thing is read in whichever manner you like or write in whichever manner you like. Don't get offended by any other uh, studying method like others tells you. You take your own path to do it and take which is your strength and weakness. You check about all those things, and that is what you need to know first about yourself. That is the most important thing when you are in this position. There's a moon three things I used to tell.
All right. And what are the three things you would tell faculty members or college personnel?
I used to tell faculties that if I had some problems by studying or any other things like if I had some problem studying, I used to go and ask my teachers 100 times, but they're ready to teach me. If I have some problem by writing or if I have some spelling mistake, they used to accept that and teach me what are spelling mistakes I've done and how to correct it also. And they will support me in every aspect of exams.
All right. Thank you so much, Sanjay. It's really nice to know that you could find a Polytech Institute which is providing you all the accommodations to help you um, on a level playing field, and they're also faculty members are also aligning with um, inclusive pedagogy and making sure that you are learning the best way you can. So thank you so much for joining us today. That brings us to the end of our webinar, everyone.
Ma'am, can I ask something?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to know, since it's a really a good webinar, I can say it's going to help a lot of people with dyslexia and other learning disabilities. So, what are the things if I'm a, I have done research in learning theories, as well as I created model from IIT Delhi. So I would like to give my some kind of support or in designing special curriculum for the children, because I feel there is a gap between, like, we are talking all about the higher studies. What are the things can be done, or you can suggest me where I can approach if something can be done for the younger kids, or kids who are in the early age of learning, and there we can support them with some special kind of curriculum, a special kind of learning. Can you suggest me something?
Right, so we do have a vertical that works with school teachers. What we can do is, could you drop in your email ID or some contact on the chat? You can send it personally
Where
to me.
right now? I'm not looking. I'm not able to see exactly where the chat box
It'll
is.
be in the bottom right corner.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Got
Yeah,
it, got
so
it.
you can just
Yeah,
send that and we'll approach you.
yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Um, Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Uh, Actually, as Dr. Aarti had said, I'm also a special educator. I did this SLD course itself. So if needed, or if any help, in any way I can be of help, I would be very happy to help you all out. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much. If it would be great if you could also drop in your email ID or some contact, and for any specific need, we'll reach out to you.
Yes, I'll drop in. Not a problem. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, I have a question.
Yeah,
Hello.
please go ahead. Yeah. We can't hear you. Your voice is breaking quite a bit.
And if you're saying something, you're not audible.
If you're not able to talk, you can leave and rejoin. Then maybe you can talk.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Great. So I just wanted to know if there's any special interest group working on people with learning disabilities, and I wish to be a part of it as a research project.
All right. So we'll get in touch with you. If we do have a need to collaborate, or if we need somebody on board as an advisory role.
Yeah.
So
My
I
question arises because, you know, the assessment for these kind of people, there's always a, a question as to whether you're being just to the rest of the class in being, more equal to, some special people. So that's the thing. So assessments and some other things So there might be, some scope there for looking into things. That's why. Thank you.
Definitely. And I've seen you've dropped in your email ID. So the relevant like vertical working on it, we'll forward it to them and tell them that this is what you're willing to collaborate on, and we'll get in touch.
Thank you so much, Bhavya ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, AICTE. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhavya ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, if I would like to add one more thing, if in case there are like, a kind of research, as the other ma'am said also, I'll talk to my superior and I'll just see if at Manav Rachna, we are able to do something. Okay. Thank you so
Definitely.
much.
So
Yeah.
we do help institutions start their journey with inclusion and higher ed also. So I have your email ID. We'll get in touch.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
So in that case, now we've come to the closure in terms of any questions, any understanding, or if you would want us to, assist you in any manner. We have already shared our email ID, so please feel free to reach out to us, to drop in a message. And thank you so much for being so attentive. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. We would also
Hello.
like to really thank AICT for giving us this podium and taking this entire conversation around
Hello.
inclusion. Sorry, somebody was saying anything?
Hello.
Yeah.
Madam, I am Mohan Iyer calling from Excel Group of Institutions in Namakkal in Tamil Nadu.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Madam, if we would like to set up this ambience for the disabled, whom do we approach, madam?
Sorry, sir. In terms of what?
No, we would like to set up the infrastructure, pedagogy, curriculum, and all that. No, if we have to set up fresh for looking at these students with learning disability,
Yeah.
do you have any mentor who could support us?
Sure, sir. Why not? We can talk about it in brief. We will share. We have shared our email ID. We'll reshare it, and in fact, at the end of this webinar, when we end our entire series of webinar, we'll be sharing the entire handbook that we have collated with everybody. In the
Okay.
meanwhile, if want to connect and discuss more about this, please feel free to reach out to us.
Okay.
Bhavya has already shared the email IDs on the chat, and we'll take the conversation ahead, just keeping the interest of time in
Okay.
place for everybody else.
Okay, madam. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everybody. Please feel free to reach out if there's something that comes to you later, if there's some sort of discussion you would want to take ahead later. So now that we are already towards the end of the timeline for the webinar, we would really want to thank everybody on behalf of Changing and AICT for being a wonderful audience on this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.